guys, it's Shatoya with the Las Vegas IT Management Podcast. Today I'm super excited because I get to interview Chris Bihar with Blue Bear Consulting. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, Shatoya. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, of course. I'm very excited to have you on today. I know this has been a couple-week process of getting you on, but I'm super excited just learn a little bit more about what you do. And I know you've been in IT and security consulting since 2001. What caused you to be inspired to start your own company? And how has the industry evolved since then?
So my first job in IT was actually CompUSA when I was 15. I'm a lifer. I've never worked outside of IT. So I've been kind of fortunate in that way that I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I started my computer career working in retail. I absorbed as much knowledge as I could. I took classes offered through CompUSA, and I earned my MCSE when I was 16 years old. Transitioned into the repair department and got other certifications in Novell, A+, Apple, HP. I was doing printer repair for a while. And I remember sitting in a class, I think it was a networking essentials class for the MCSE, and it was taught by a computer consultant. And I remember thinking, that's exactly what I want to do. I loved the idea of getting hands-on with the technologies, having the freedom to work independently, and working closely with organizations to improve their IT, their security. Back then, security wasn't as big of a deal as it was now, but it was definitely something that, a lot of people talked about, and it ended up becoming, one of my specialties over the years. The industry has evolved immensely since I started. Obviously, the internet wasn't as big as it was, and the importance of cybersecurity just wasn't there. I realized early on, though, probably in the early 2000s, that security was really very important. And I started attending the DEF CON conferences here in Las Vegas. I'm a transplant. I was from San Diego. That's where I was for about 20 years and moved out here to Vegas. I started going to the conventions and have been going off and on to the DEF CON security convention for probably about 26 years now. It's a great opportunity to meet people in the security industry, to learn new things, get hands-on, and get some, real world experience in some of this.
Got it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Chris, for sharing that. And I just love San Diego. So that's so awesome. You're, originally from there. But you did mention the DEF CON. Is it, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Exactly what is that?
So DEF CON is an annual security conference that's been held for, I think, 32 years now. And basically, it's a hacker convention where they set up talks, they have labs and villages for all kinds of different areas of cybersecurity. So, these days we have things like car hacking villages, aerospace hacking villages. Everything you can think of having to do with computer security is there. You can get your hands on, you can talk to people. That's one of the big things about the DEF CON and the security culture in general, is this idea that we share kind of vulnerabilities and exploits and things that we found to help others protect themselves. So I really kind of believed in that ethos, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great opportunity to just get out there, and I met some of my best friends at the convention over the years. So.
Got it. And is that the convention that we all hear about that occur at the casinos that they say every year that people come into town and they have to protect their services from hackers?
For sure. It's one of those things. Actually have to have a good security posture going into it. So I personally, like to bring a burner phone. I don't bring the work corporate phone. You don't want to join different Wi-Fi networks. Even having your Bluetooth on, you'll see little things pop up where, hey, something wants to connect and be the keyboard on your phone and whatnot. A lot of it is just, kind of people joking around, but, it does underscore the serious threats that are out there. And a lot of the people that attend there are some of the best, security people and computers all over the world. It's a great event for anybody, whether you're getting started or you're a seasoned professional in IT to check out sometime.
Got it. No, and I've, being a native from Las Vegas, I've heard a lot about it. So that's so awesome to hear that you've attended those for quite a while now. And Chris, with your experience across various projects like website development, application design, and infrastructure solutions, what project has been the most challenging or rewarding for you?
I've had a lot of challenges in my career, and I think the most significant one came in 2020. I'd been working with a small biotech for a few years. They were only about 60 employees at the time, and they had a rapid PCR flu test. And when COVID came around, they got some government grants and needing to scale up. So within a year, I took this company from 50 employees to 700, opening new sites, hiring employees of mine, training their employees, creating security plans, even spinning up new buildings during the time of COVID, which was really difficult because of supply chains and getting vendors on board. This rapid growth was very difficult and allowed me to put a lot of my skills to the test, technical, operational skills. I had to expand my team and build their infrastructure to allow for that kind of growth, which is pretty dramatic. Most companies will never see that kind of growth in 20 years, much less 1 year. So this included a lot of hands-on work, coordinating with the vendors to expand and scale the systems, bring up the new sites and buildings for office work, laboratories, manufacturing areas. Like I said, supply chains were very difficult, so it was hard to get switches and servers and things like that. And we had really tight deadlines, which seemed almost impossible at the time to achieve. While most people were home, I was out working 60 to 70 hours a week on site, making critical IT decisions and building policies, procedures, and systems in a highly regulated FDA environment. So it was pretty intense. It was extremely rewarding, though, to navigate that period and see my client eventually get acquired in 2021 for $600 million by one of the largest biotechs in the world. So, that was really, fulfilling from a professional standpoint. But in addition, we did a lot of good. It was a time where the world was kind of looking for solutions and answers to control the pandemic. And it felt good to be part of, that process to bring something to the community and to the world that would help out.
Yeah, no, and that's amazing, especially during the time like a lot of businesses were struggling just due to COVID. So for you to have that growth, that's absolutely amazing. And when it comes to physical security, is often overlooked in today's digital focused world. Can you share some insights on why access control and video surveillance are still critical for businesses' security?
Sure. I mean, the reality is that physical control of your assets is one of the most critical components you can have in cybersecurity. We do have a lot of stuff in cloud, but most people still do work in some kind of on-premise nature. They have some kind of business processes that happen, manufacturing and whatnot. So it's also important for employee safety. You need to make sure you protect your people, and having a good secure site and facility for them is absolutely important. Your people are your number one asset. That's one thing they teach you in some of the more advanced management security courses is that, yes, your data is valuable, but the people are really the biggest asset you have. And, you want to make sure that you keep yourself free from litigation and maintain compliance with regulations and whatnot. A lot of those require good, principles of practical physical security. One of the most successful hackers of all time, his name was Kevin Mitnick. He specialized in the art of engineering and regularly was able to walk his way into organizations, extract data or program software, and get whatever he needed simply by walking in and pretending to be a vendor. He wrote a great book that I like called The Art of Intrusion that I recently reread, and he details his exploits in physically penetrating organizations. And it's something that I think was written about 20 years ago. Pretty much everything he talks about still rings true today. So it's very important to keep your physical security under control.
Got it. No, very. And when it comes to risk and vulnerability assessments are key to a solid security strategy, what common vulnerabilities do you encounter most often when conducting these assessments for clients?
I find that the same vulnerability has persisted over the years, and it's the most effective vector for attackers and the easiest to fix. And that's people. They are the weakest link in any system. Creating a culture of security in an organization with frequent trainings and robust policies is the most cost-effective solution to prevent attacks from being successful. MGM right here in our backyard was compromised last year with a ransomware attack that cost them $100 million. And it all could have been prevented by implementing better policies and procedures for their help desk team. A large organization like that can be vulnerable, then every organization is vulnerable. So it's the same story we saw with the DNC hack by the Russians in 2016 when they compromised the Clinton campaign. It's better off that you train your staff and train them well and have good policies and procedures, because, that's really kind of the first line of defense. These types of attacks are the easiest to pull off. They're the least technically complex. And, there's a really good book that I read on this recently as well. I do a lot of reading. It was called Fancy Bear Goes Fishing, and it covers that attack as well as the history of viruses and malware. Highly recommend that book. It was a great read, and really gives you kind of some insight into, what is it that we're dealing with, and where it came from.
Got it. And you did mention the importance of training your employees. How does someone start this process, or, making sure that they're going through the right process of making sure that they're doing the right training?
The key is to have the right person on your side, a good advocate. There are a lot of IT people that kind of focus on the nuts and bolts and aren't really so trained in kind of the operational aspects. So I think this is where, key stakeholders, board of directors, et cetera, really need to look at kind of the big picture. It isn't so much necessarily about technical security controls. A lot of them are operational and really kind of thinking big picture. So a lot of that starts with just kind of sitting down and saying, hey, we need a security program, developing some policies, procedures, and those policies and procedures can kind of dictate actions like, frequent awareness training, phishing assessments, et cetera. So it's really about kind of starting right from the bottom and building a good foundation to build your business on.
Got it. Understood. Which I think is super important. Thank you for sharing, Chris. Could you walk through a real life example of a penetration test you've conducted and the kind of threats or vulnerabilities you were able to uncover?
Sure, there's been quite a few, but penetration testing and vulnerability testing is often very easy, because once you find your way through an overlooked area of the system, it's easy to gain leverage and move laterally and escalate your privileges, and then implement what we call persistence, which means that, if one system's turned off or something gets rebooted, that me as the attacker can still get back in. The key is really just getting your foot in the door undetected, and from there you can kind of, do whatever you want. One incident that comes to mind was a project I was working on a few years ago, with the target being an educational institution. I was hired on by the director to do a short engagement to assess their overall security. There were no easy points of entry that I could find at the network, so I turned to phishing and social engineering, which, usually works pretty well, and it's a pretty quick way to getting something and getting in the door. I looked at their website and I noticed they had a fundraising event coming up that seemed promising, and the email address used by the organization or by the organizers was a Gmail account versus one issued by the organization itself. I created a similar Gmail account by just adding a "the" in front of their official email address, and then wrote a little script to scrape their website and download all the email addresses of all the staff and faculty. I then created an email pretending to be the organizers with a link to a survey that would enter the respondent into a raffle to win free tickets to the fancy black tie event they had and a $100 gift card. I knew who the chair was organizing the event. I impersonated them. And in the email, I said it was sponsored by one of the families who were listed as one of the main donors. All of this built credibility in the email, and the link to the survey took the targets to a website I had created that looked a lot like a Google sign-in page. Within about an hour, I had harvested the credentials of 50 staff and found that many of them did not have two-factor authentication enabled. So from there, I was able to gain access to the VPN and the internal network, as well as other important systems that relied on single sign-on with that Google account. This attack was very noisy, and it was the kind of thing that would have been uncovered within a short amount of time. Really, it was just to prove a point, to the executive board and the stakeholders that they needed to put some time and effort and money into training the people. But, at the end of the day, they weren't ready for a comprehensive pen test. The reality is that most organizations that do get pen tests or think that they need one haven't put the time and effort into securing the basics, and they'd be better off investing their time and money into practical security improvements like developing and implementing effective policies, procedures, and engaging an ethical hacker like myself to kind of evaluate and give them some recommendations. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like a marathon, right? If you haven't trained for it, you wouldn't go out there and try and run 24 miles. So I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about penetration tests is that they're most effective after you've had a period of hardening and really tightening up security controls to really find the things that are very unique and, very kind of more difficult to exploit. So that was a fun one. I've done quite a few over the years. It's an aspect of my job I really like a lot.
Got it. Now, that sounds like something that's probably much needed to just figure out where people are, their companies are weak at. So I get it. You advocate for a pragmatic approach to security, starting the end user awareness training. And in your opinion, what's the most important aspect of security that businesses tend to overlook?
I think most businesses don't realize how vulnerable they are until it's too late. Security is kind of an afterthought in many cases after the damage is done. Lost revenue, data, and the impact on reputation that can cost an organization significantly. And it's a big risk that many take without serious effort into taking some basic steps to protect themselves. Sure, it does cost a lot to hire a consultant to help implement these controls and set these things up. But if the cost of hiring that consultant is less than the potential impact of a breach or a hack, then it's worthwhile. Also, it's the kind of thing that, once you set these things up, they kind of keep going. And it's not like you have to keep making that investment over and over. You just kind of make incremental improvements to it. So that's one of them. And then the other thing that I see is a lot of people think that cybersecurity insurance is the answer to this. Oftentimes claims are rejected because many people don't prepare and have reasonable security in place. And that's the thing that, you really have to protect yourself and have a good security posture. Having cybersecurity insurance is great, but it's not going to save you at the end of the day. It's really just going to save you if you've done all the right things to try and protect yourself and show that you've been diligent about it.
Got it. So the insurance pretty much doesn't technically protect you from the stuff that's out there. So I understand. And then, so what are some of the key policies or procedures every company should have in place to build a strong security foundation?
Sure. There are a handful of policies and procedures that every organization should have at a minimum. Things like acceptable use and training policies are instrumental for your staff. You also need like a backup and disaster recovery and incident response plan and policies. Every organization should have an onboarding and offboarding policy and procedures to ensure that those critical processes are handled consistently. It all really depends on the nature of the organization and what regulations apply to them. For example, if you have sensitive health or personal or financial information, you should have a lot more policies and procedures and be a little bit more robust than, say, a small business that just kind of deals with, customers on Yelp or things like that. These policies should be shared with staff and, where appropriate, become part of the culture so that they're effective and well known. Policy means nothing if it's not enforced, and a procedure is useless if it's not followed every time. So I think, having less is more in this case, and having the right ones is really key.
Got it, which is very, very important. And then with so many new tools and technologies entering the market, how do you stay updated and decide what's truly valuable for improving security?
I like to read a lot. Many vendors put out a lot of good information on emerging threats. CrowdStrike does a really good job getting some of that stuff out there. They also talk a lot about the big threat actors like nation states and whatnot. I follow a lot of people on X and Twitter. It's a really good resource. There are many accounts that talk exclusively about cybersecurity. In addition, there's some good weekly podcasts available. So like on Spotify, I listen to one called Risky Business that does a really good job on kind of keeping the pulse of what's new. It's tough sometimes to make time to learn while you're working full time, but it's absolutely essential for any IT professional to continue evolving and learning, as well as business owners. They really need to at least be aware of this and make sure they've got the right people in place and they're asking the right questions to protect themselves and their companies.
Got it. And you did mention a few books. Is there any current books that you're currently reading?
I'm kind of in between. I'm actually right now studying for a couple certifications, so the books for those are kind of Bible sized. But yeah, I really just like to read anything about cybersecurity. A lot of good authors, like I mentioned, Kevin Mitnick. He's one of my favorites. There's also another author called Bruce Schneer, who he's really really good and has done a lot of books on kind of cybersecurity in general. You really can't go wrong with putting more time and listening to this and learning about security, particularly if you're in the area and you work in IT.
Got it. And if you don't mind, if you could provide me some of those links for our listeners to go look for, that'd be awesome,
Yeah,
Chris.
for sure.
And so, you've been passionate about AI for many years. Have you seen AI evolve in the security industry? And what excites you most about the recent advancements?
Sure. I've been into AI pretty heavily since the early 2000s. Again, I used to read a lot of books on this. One of my favorite authors there is Ray Kurzweil, who's kind of highly regarded as the godfather of AI. His books over the years, going back into the 90s, have kind of predicted what's been happening with AI. So it's really fascinating now even to look back and read some of these and see how right he was about a lot of these things. What was really needed for us to get where we are now with AI is computing power. And it takes a lot of processing to make something like GPT work as well as it does. And it took time for that technology to advance. You also need kind of the internet to grow up around it. So AI really needed all these foundations to really become what it is now. And what I find amazing is that at our fingertips, we have the most powerful technology. Everybody has access to this, right? ChatGPT is freely available. There's other ways to access AI tools. It is the most powerful tool that humans have ever created. And there's a saying that, the last invention that humans will ever make is what they call AGI, artificial general intelligence. Because at that point, we won't need to create anything new. The AI will be so much more advanced that it can actually start creating new innovations in healthcare, technology, microprocessor development, etc. So it's really, pretty powerful stuff that I'm very excited about. What's really exciting for me too these days is how much AI is being woven into applications that we use day to day and the potential benefits for businesses of all sizes to be more efficient and more secure. AI can help automate manual processes. It can help find intrusions into your network, identifying weak passwords. There's AI these days for penetration testing. So there's a lot of good stuff, and a lot of it's freely available. So now's an exciting time to be alive, that's for sure.
Got it. And I personally love the software that's available to us. And I don't think you mentioned it. Do you have a current favorite when it comes to either some type of AI? I know there's so many different softwares out there.
I mean, I built and trained my own AI models. The thing about it is it's so expensive. So like ChatGPT, Gemini, the amount of money it takes to train those models is, we're talking billions and billions of dollars. So I personally do like ChatGPT. I think it's one of the better ones out there. They're kind of revolutionary in the way that they solve the problem that others have been working on for years. Google has been working on AI for over a dozen years, and they actually came up with the GPT part in ChatGPT. They just weren't able to innovate on it. So it's fascinating to see this small company that started, relatively obscurely in Silicon Valley kind of come up out of nowhere. And it looks like, OpenAI is going to be probably one of the biggest companies in the world when it IPOs. So pretty exciting stuff. And yeah, we'll see what the future holds for all of us, but it looks pretty promising.
Yeah, very exciting. And when it comes to what emerging trends or technologies in IT and security are you currently keeping a close eye on, and how do you think they will shape the industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, AI really is the name of the game. It's going to be integrated into everything. We're seeing it on the cybersecurity side. I attended the CrowdStrike conference. I also go to like the Cisco convention. It's integrated into networking, pretty much everything. I mean, down to your iPhone. So that really is the name of the game, is getting that integrated. The key though is responsibly integrating it into business workflows and processes. There's a lot of potential for abuse for it, for, leaking of data. AI models can be tricked. I've taken a course on adversarial AI and hacking AI models. And, that's something that really needs to be addressed. I think, like anything else, when you've got this nascent kind of emerging industry, regulations are kind of few and far behind. So this is where I think the industry itself has to kind of self-regulate for a little bit until everybody else catches up. It's very exciting, but I tell businesses who want to integrate AI that you need to do it responsibly. Sit down, let's come up with an AI governance policy. Let's really decide, what kinds of things are allowed, what isn't allowed, what kind of checks and balances are going to be put on that AI. And, how do you test this stuff and make sure that, it's actually going to work? This is especially true in some of the emerging areas that AI is really going to be able to help with like healthcare and, things that are really kind of close to the human experience. So it's exciting like anything, but we need to tread lightly and make sure that we're doing the right thing as we go.
Got it. I totally agree with you. Thank you for sharing, Chris. And what advice would you give to businesses that are just starting to build their security programs? What should they prioritize to ensure they are well protected?
Sure. I mean, starting with the basics and getting a good advisor to help you on your journey and focus on building a strong foundation early on with those policies and procedures. That's really going to allow you to kind of drive those business decisions. And security by design is a principle that we like to talk about in the industry that's often overlooked. Where, it's much easier to build security early on, those processes, kind of get all that stuff early before an organization grows, because it's much harder and much more expensive to implement afterwards. So, I think that's kind of the best advice is, think about it early on and make sure that, as you start kind of building your organization and adding staff, that you've got those foundational pieces in play, and then also kind of evaluate it. It's not the kind of thing that you write these policies and procedures, 5 years ago and don't ever touch them. They're meant to be kind of these living, breathing documents that need to be reviewed annually and, adapted to whatever changes in your business.
Thank you for sharing, Chris. Okay, I was going to ask you. So when it comes to them looking for, a business that's just looking to starting out with an IT advisor, would you be a right connection for that business?
Definitely. I've been doing this for a lot of years and I look at things from a technical standpoint as well as kind of a business operational standpoint. And that's where I think a lot of people make the mistake is they think they just need somebody to set up the computers or do the technical part of it. It really takes a little bit of planning ahead of time just to make sure that, those things are being set up according to a policy in a way that, is secure and that takes security, as an important factor. So, I know myself, I know a lot of other consultants, there are a lot of skilled people in this area. The key is really to make it a priority early on. You're going to make a little bit of an investment in it, but that investment I think pays off in the long term. And as a business scale, that investment, continues to grow because you've already set up these foundational, key characteristics of what your security program is and kind of build off of that.
Chris, thank you so much for sharing that with me. No, I totally agree with you. And as a low voltage technician, yes, there might be some investment, but I feel like just my personal opinion on it, you may disagree or agree or disagree. But a lot of times if they do that investment, it could possibly save them money in the long run. I don't know if you agree with that comment that I just made.
For sure. Like I said, I've worked with a lot of consulting efforts to kind of build new buildings or retrofit existing ones. And having a good plan is absolutely essential, right? And thinking about the future, if you're going to have a certain area that you may not necessarily want to build out right now, maybe pre-running cable and doing some things can save you some money down the road. Putting in some conduit, right, between buildings. You've got a trench opened up, right? Why not put something there to allow you future connectivity? So in a lot of ways, I think, I really do understand kind of the business that you're in. I work with a lot of low voltage cabling that really, having that solid plan and looking a little bit forward is really a smart thing to do. Can save a lot of money and, allow you to expand as needed.
Got it. Yes. Agreed. And then looking back on your career, what's one lesson or piece of advice you wish you had known when you first started in IT and security consulting?
It's much easier to learn new skills when you're young. You have a lot more time and less responsibilities. So use that time wisely, invest it in yourself and your career, learn as much as you can and apply yourself to really getting good at learning your craft. Dive into as many areas as you can, even if it's some areas that, you're uncomfortable with. it'll pay off long term and allow you to be more successful down the road and have a solid understanding of different technologies. I feel like I did spend my time wisely. I started my company when I was 20 years old and did put in a lot of effort into learning those things. But even me, still, with all those years of experience, I'm still learning every single day. And I think that's something that you have to prepare for if you're going to be in this business. The only thing that's constant is change. So you need to be able to, be able to change and be able to constantly absorb new information and just get better and better. I personally see IT as something that a lot of people, turn to these days. That it's a good paying job and it's a great opportunity. There are a lot of, good jobs out there for it. But I don't see a lot of people have the same passion for it as myself and some other friends and stuff that I have. I think that's kind of a detriment because really, to do IT well, I think you have to live it, eat it, breathe it, and really kind of be part of it just because, everything changes so fast. So, that's the best advice I can give people is really take that time, build that discipline early on and, become a lifelong, learner of IT and security. It'll serve you well throughout your entire career.
Got it. And what do you think has caused people to not be as involved with IT?
I think it's just that, now it's become kind of more mainstream. So you can kind of go to college and kind of learn these basics. And I personally have worked with developers who, have a master's, right, in computer science, but they don't understand anything about networking, which is crazy to me, right? Because you're building these applications that work over a network. How do you not know what IP addresses and subnets and, fundamental stuff? So I'm not really sure what it is. I think it's just come down to where IT knowledge has been commoditized in a way. And I think that's where, I personally have seen it. I've tried to hire people in the past when my business was growing and, I would interview people who came out of college and I had kind of this simple quiz, 5 questions that seemed pretty basic. And people who said that, I have Linux experience in networking, and I would ask them very simple questions and they couldn't give me an answer for it. Which is really, I think, kind of a bad thing because if these people end up in jobs that, they're responsible for certain things, they don't have this foundational knowledge, they could actually, lead to a breach or some other outage or something like that could cost an organization money. So the thing about IT as well is it isn't regulated in the same way that like architects or lawyers or, doctors are. And that's kind of a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because we don't have those kind of strict things that hold people accountable. So I personally like to teach, awareness and, getting people to really look at this as something serious that has, in some cases, it's life or death, right? If a call doesn't go through to a dispatch center or something like that, network goes down, people's lives can be lost because of bad IT. So I think we all need to take it very responsibly, these days.
Got it. No, I totally agree. And then Chris, if someone's looking to possibly, do business with you or anything like that, like how can they reach out to you?
Sure. You can reach me on my website, www.bearcyber.com. Or LinkedIn. Those are usually kind of the main avenues. I love working with businesses of all sizes. I've worked with nonprofits, schools, construction companies, architects, everything to Fortune 100 companies. So I like to specialize kind of in the small, medium-sized businesses. I think startups really, are near and dear to my heart, and I think I can offer kind of the most value to them, just as kind of a liaison and give them some guidance where I think a lot of it's lacking these days. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I love having conversations about IT and technology. It definitely is something that's really close to my heart, and I really have a passion for it.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to add that to the description. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, thank you so much for interviewing me and having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I was looking at your website and kind of the things that you do and some of the past interviews, and I think this is a great thing. I made Nevada and Las Vegas my home, and I was very big into the community and, working with businesses, networking events, doing seminars, trainings, that sort of thing. So I look forward to doing that here in Vegas and kind of my new home. And it was a pleasure to meet you. I really appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
Yes, of course, Chris. And I've enjoyed it as well. And I look forward to our conversation in the future. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a nice day.
You too.